Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at WRFL. The frequency is a cool 88.1 megahertz with winds coming in all the way to the left. The in-flight entertainment for this journey has been provided by Radio Free Lexington, your only alternative left. For your safety and comfort, please stay tuned with your seatbelts fastened until the plane comes to a complete stop. Please check around your seat for any commercial radio trash you may have brought on board with you and deposit it in the bin as you disembark from the aircraft. On behalf of RFL Airlines and the entire crew, I'd like to thank you for joining us on this trip, and we are looking forward to seeing you tuned in again soon.
Good evening, everybody. It is 9:01, and you're listening to WRFL Lexington. My name is Allison, also known as A Penny. I am the local music director, and we are here now with WRFL Live. This is a weekly radio show that airs every Wednesday, 9 to 10 p.m., and we share our local bands and artists. They perform live. We get to interview with them. We get to chat with them. So it's very fun. And this week we have Gale Eakins in the virtual booth. Would you like to say hi?
Hello.
So Abigail, do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the music?
Okay, hi. So, I am 18. I live in Lexington. I did not grow up here. I grew up in a very small town where it was impossible to do anything local. You had to go places. So I've actually been playing around Lexington for I want to say almost a year now. I used to be in a band and now I'm not in a band and now I'm just doing my own thing. So it's really exciting to be here tonight.
Well, that's awesome. Where exactly were you from originally?
I'm from Williamstown, Kentucky, which is about an hour north up I-75.
Yes, I think I actually have a friend from Williamstown, a classmate or someone. But anyways, all right, we will jump right into the music. So this first song that's up is Mr. Williams.
It's so hard to figure out what to do about the knot in my chest. They are scared. short on time before his eyelids close again. I wish I didn't throw away the little things he used to say inside that tiny house on memory lane. All in all, it seems I'm growing up faster than I ever imagined. Maybe in another life I'll find you waiting right here. Who knows where the sun has gone? I wait for the answer every day. Someone tell me where I went wrong. It can't be just that nothing cold can stay.
Well, that was Gale Eakins. I actually played the wrong track. That was lovely. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that track?
Oh boy, yeah. So I wrote that's actually one of the first songs that I ever thought about producing out. Before that, I just wrote things on the piano and just played them at like common grounds on East High back when they had like open mics. And I would just play, and everybody would kind of like it. And then at some point, I got into garage band, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I just did this with like synths and added a drum track and stuff? I think that'd be pretty neat. So I went ahead and did that. But what the song is actually about is post breakup of my first serious boyfriend. I don't know, I guess an older teenager. We didn't even date for that long. I was just really torn up over nothing. But like people leave a mark on you. I thoroughly believe that every single person I've met and become close to has had a long-term impact on the person that I am. So that was a little bit about like, after we broke up, I was kind of navigating that. Well, you mean a lot to me, but now we're not like together anymore. And what am I supposed to do with this feeling? Like, was it something that I did? I don't really understand. It just a bunch of regular teenage angst feelings packed up in a little bubblegummy indie track.
I feel it. And it definitely, it's just like very like ethereal sounding. I just love the synth tracks and how they kind of lay underneath your voice. I think it blends very well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you said that you made this in GarageBand. So I guess like have you used GarageBand before you produced this track, or you just kind of started learning, and then how do you do a lot of work in GarageBand now?
Well, before I produced that, I played around with GarageBand just with like little minor projects to see what I can do. That's the first time I actually sat down and tried to use it. Before that, what I did was I was really into like classical composition because I'm actually like a violinist and I was in orchestra and really into classical music. So I was like, I want to write my own stuff. So I started in MuseScore and I like notated scores and things like that. So when I moved over to GarageBand, I had kind of a vague understanding of what was supposed to be going on, but it was definitely a learning curve, and I was a lot worse at it back then than I am now. I still use GarageBand. Everything I produce is pretty much just produced on my iPhone 7. So
No, that's awesome. I know, like, so you mentioned that you played violin, so you have a bit of a classical and like music theory background, which is interesting too, because I was in band in high school, so I know a bit of music theory, and I also picked up GarageBand around the same time as well for the same reason, because I kind of understood like major, minor chords, like how to kind of structure those, and so I can kind of tell, especially in that first track. Like the synth chords underneath, like that kind of makes sense to me because I don't know, being classically trained kind of does that for you. So I guess if you want to speak on that, so how does playing the violin previously kind of influence your music and songwriting now?
Well, I would personally say that it influences a lot because before I played violin, I played piano for a few years when I was really young, kind of not seriously, but I had piano lessons like once a week, pretty much from the age of 8 to like 10 or 11, something like that. So I got a little bit of a head start on that, but I've always been listening to music. Especially, I think it started when I was in church. And my mom, she has an amazing voice, and she was in like, choir in college and things like that. So one of the first things she ever did was teach me how to sing like little hymns and things like that. And she'd have me get up in front of the church in my little dress and my little tights that had runs in them because I was always like tripping around places. And I'd go and I'd sing, some song about it. And then she taught me harmonies. I remember specifically I was in my room at my house with my little white carpet and just sitting on the floor. And my mom was playing this cassette tape for me of like this old 80s hymn church music. And she said, okay, so just sing what you sing, but like plug your ears and I'm going to sing something else at the same time. But don't listen to me. Just listen to what you're doing. And so, having memories like that, I've always just been super passionate about music. And then around the age of 11, like right after I stopped playing piano, I picked up violin. And that's when I really got into classical music because I went to the Northern Kentucky School of Music. And they had me doing violin lessons there. They eventually persuaded me to be in orchestra. And I just went from there. I played with a bunch of different orchestras and got pretty far with that. Even won like a singular award for a solo that I did at one point. Absolutely love classical music, specifically like romantic era classical music, especially Soviet postmodern classical music. So a lot of that postmodern romanticism in general, I take a lot from the chord structures and use it to influence my music just because it's what I hear and it's what I like to hear.
That's so interesting. I love that your mom did that for you, like to teach you harmony. That is so
Yeah.
cool. Like I think I definitely learned harmony like as I started learning more music and playing my instrument. But that is just so cute. I love that a lot. So kind of talking a little bit more about your classical background. So do you still play violin today? Are you still playing in orchestras or do you play just kind of as a hobby now?
Well, I kind of took a detour. I like to say I got way too excited about Spanish when I was in high school. So when I was going into college, coming out of senior year, where I was super involved in violin, I was like, I'm going to be an anthropologist. This is what I want to do. And then I'll play in the UK orchestra with an anthropology major, and it'll be fine. And then COVID happened, and we don't have in-person classes, and all I do is sit and read about like ancient humans and write papers about ancient humans. And because it's online and I work so much, I never have time for violin. And I was just like thinking, man, this is just such a miserable existence. Like I really miss classical music, and it was just such a big part of my life for such a long time. And a lot of my old orchestra buddies, of course, are out in college and they're all majoring in music. Like, this is what I'm learning, and posting their little videos on Instagram. And I'm just like, I miss hearing you play the cello. I want to play violin, It's so I have made the decision that I'm going to switch majors and get back into playing violin and get back into being in the orchestra because it's just what I've always wanted to do. And I just, sometimes you got to take a couple of weird, awkward turns before you realize, how important something is to you.
Oh, absolutely. I think I've had many conversations, I guess, like just figuring out what you want to do in college is like, there's no real pressure and there's no like, you should feel as if you should do something that you truly want to do. And like, if you want to pursue music, you should definitely do it. If you want to pursue, law, you should definitely do it, And then I feel like a lot of people, I know a lot of people that were in college and they kind of regret what they did in college because I guess they were kind of pushed to do a certain major or take a certain path in college. And they weren't really satisfied with the result. So it's good that you kind of figure that out early on in your college career.
Right.
So back to kind of like your classical music, I guess, do you have any favorite composers? I was just curious. Like anyone
Anyone
in
who knows
particular?
me. Anyone who knows me will tell you Dmitri Shostakovich is my favorite classical composer ever.
Oh my
No
gosh.
competition.
Oh my gosh. I haven't listened to classical music forever because I mostly listened to classical music when I was in band. But I have heard a couple of Shostakovich pieces. Our marching band actually did a Shostakovich show the year before.
What?
Yes.
That is crazy.
Yeah, our marching band did a show. It was the year before I went into high school, so it was like when I was in 8th grade. So it was really early, but I think they did the Firebird.
That is what's his name?
Stravinsky. Goodness.
Stravinsky. There you go.
Thank
There you go.
Yes. Gosh. Gosh. But yes. No, that's super cool. But I think that having that background is really interesting to me. I think a lot of people, a lot of musicians that are like classically trained, I think it's so cool, like how they kind of evolve into their music and grow. Like you can hear a lot of that influence in there.
Right.
Alrighty. So now we're going to take a quick short break after these messages. And then Gale, if it's all right with you, we're going to jump right into the next song.
All right.
Alrighty.
This portion of WRFL's programming is made possible in part by Pops Resale. Pops Resale offers a selection of vintage records, clothes, and other collectibles. Pops Resale is located in the Meadowthorpe Shopping Center. More information, including their show calendar, can be found at popsresale.com. WRFL thanks Pops Resale for supporting college radio.
All right, and we are back with WRFL Live. It's your girl A Penny, also known as Allison, your local music director, and I am here with Gale Eakins for the night.
That's me.
And so we were just chatting a little bit. We did one of her first songs, so now we're gonna go right into her second song.
Maybe I'll never be weightless, but that's alright. We're all carrying baggage at the end of the night. I remember how the evenings used to roll by after midnight, and I'd be there drunk on moonlight, rosy cheeked and dressed in a red wine. It was too soon, 17 and living nightmares like a daydream. Told myself it wouldn't matter, then I felt my youth shattered. I know I'll never be weightless, but that's alright. We're all carrying baggage at the end of the night. Backlit streetlight, frost that you can't bite. Sunday mornings, gentle warnings. If you have to say I love you, do it when your mouth is covered by the sheets that stuff your cheeks. You'll remember this for weeks until you finally start to wonder why he loves to keep you smothered in the unforgiving green. Only you know what that means. And when the daylight starts to fade, dying in that December kind of way, I shrink the hours into minutes, diminish the pain it causes my aching soul to witness how I die a little more every day that I stay, hoping to hold on to something hopeless, trying to focus my heart on someone who never wanted to hold mine. When I see you walking through my memory, I'm just happy I'm not with you. I'm not with you. I know I'll never be weightless, but that's alright. We're all carrying baggage
Alrighty, that was Gale Eakins with Weightless. I loved that track. I don't know if you listened to any Beach House.
I love Beach House.
Oh my gosh. I once that track started, I was like, Beach House. I was like, this is giving me Beach House vibes. I feel like a lot of anything pretty like synthy or like dream pop kind of reminds me of Beach House, but yeah, I dug that a lot. So do you want to talk a little bit about your track Weightless?
Sure. So it's a little more of a serious one. It's a little bit more of a difficult one. It kind of starts out talking about, well, maybe I'll never be weightless, but that's all right. Just acknowledging when difficult things happen in your life, and when you go through difficult things, to some extent, I believe you're always going to carry that with you. And I believe that it really changes who you are. But while you can't control what happens to you and how terrible it is, you can control how you deal with it and how you move on with it. And, I've had some pretty terrible things happen that I don't really, like to talk about. But, and it affects a lot, mostly like the relationships that I have. It's very difficult for me to trust people. And so I try and be upfront with all the relationships that I'm in about, well, hey, I've got some stuff that has happened and it's very sad and it's very terrible. Please be mindful of this moving forward, And that, weightless for me is inadvertently kind of in a very indirect, beating around the bush way, talking about some of the things that I think about and some of the things that I have to deal with. And just kind of reminiscing on like the little pieces of imagery I have from like, times where things are really bad, but looking on them from that kind of lens, they almost seem kind of like, I don't know, it feels like I'm detached from them in a way. And, there's a lot of psychological studies on how, like, when things like that happen to you, you kind of dissociate, you know what I mean? And you sort of look on it from this outsider sort of perspective, even though it's something that happened to you. And that's how your brain processes trauma. And so that's, I think it's very interesting when writing lyrics to be able to explore that sort of dissociative kind of vibe. I don't know.
That's very insightful for someone so young, and like especially like the thoughts behind it. I think it's very like mature and very like well, I guess put together. I guess like in a song. Do you feel as if writing music and creating music is a good or is one of your best outlets for you whenever you feel any type of trauma or any you go or just kind of an outlet for you, if that makes sense?
I really do think it's a very big outlet for me. Especially in my like, I don't know, this is all my produced tracks, you know what I mean? That I kind of have made sort of more digestible for the common human being, like listening to the radio sometime, being like, oh yeah, this is a nice little thing. But one thing that I really like to explore in a lot of the music I do live, as well as a lot of the music I just sort of write for myself, is just making it as raw as I can. And that sort of helps me to deal with it. Anyone who watched me perform at Common Grounds, I was there like every single Monday for, give or take a couple days for months and months and months and months. So, I'd go up there, and I also write a lot of poetry. So sometimes I'd read poetry, sometimes I just play some chords on the piano and like scream about how sad I was. I remember one time I went up there and I said, well, guys, I don't have a plan, but I'm here every week. And I just dragged myself out of bed. Otherwise, I wasn't going to get out of the house today. Then I pulled up a stool and I said, so I'm going to tell you guys a story about my ex-boyfriend, and, and just do stuff like that. And that's helped me feel a lot more comfortable with, the things that have happened to me. And it's not just because, I write things and then it's all out on paper, but it's more like I write things and then I release them for people to listen to. And I think that when people listen to a song, it kind of stops being your song and it stops being about you, because those people, they're going to listen to that and it's going to remind them of something. And they're going to kind of take that with them as, oh yeah, this reminds me of this thing. And then it becomes their song, because in their head, they've already put their own meaning to whatever lyrics that you've put out. And I don't know, that just makes me feel better about a lot of things. So that's the part about writing music that I really like, is that I can share it, and then all of a sudden it isn't just my problem anymore. Everyone's got to listen to it. So
No, I love that. And that's such a very, I can't think of words today for some reason, but it's just like a very selfless kind of way of looking at how you write your music. Because I feel like a lot of people who write music, it's for the sport or for the, I guess, the flex, if you will. Like, and so
Yeah.
it's a very humbling way of approaching it. And I think it's a very genuine, I don't know, place that you're coming from. And I really appreciate that. So we've talked previously about your classical influence. You've played violin. And so I guess now, obviously, your music is not classical music. So in terms of influences that are more correlated towards the music that you play now, who do you like to listen to, or who do you think influences your music that you produce?
Well, I so in middle school I went through a really big emo phase. I listened to a lot of MCR, a lot of Fall Out Boy, their older stuff, mind you. Like a lot of, just generally like rock bands, kind of heavy, some heavier bands like Bring Me the Horizon and stuff like that. Yeah, I know everybody who's like listening to this who likes classic rock is like, Bring Me the Horizon, whatever. But I just listen to stuff like that. And so that kind of got me into the, releasing my emotions thing. And then around like, I want to say 2011, 2012, something like that, I found 21 Pilots. And a lot of people like 21 Pilots, but I hate to be that hipster and be like, I liked them before it was cool, but I did listen to them long before Blurry Face came out, and I really do like their older stuff, like their self-titled album and Vessel are probably two of their favorite albums my favorite albums of theirs. So I feel like 21 Pilots has influenced me a lot, especially when it comes to like some of this more spoken word rapish stuff I like to do sometimes. And after that, I listened to a lot of like indie sort of like experimental things. Like the band Mother Mother is one of my favorite bands of all time. SGR, FKR, another good band. Like Junior Junior is another good one, and they've all like influenced my sound a lot. I feel like I've had people listen to them before, just kind of when they hand me the aux cord and I show them this weird alternative stuff, and they're just like, "What is this? It kind of sounds like your stuff," and that I consider to be the greatest compliment in the world, because I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I'm going for." But,
No,
so
that's
that's
yeah, no, that's awesome. Sorry to interrupt you.
it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like right when that song ended, I was like, yeah, Beach House. I bet she
Beach
listens to
House.
Beach House. Yeah, no, I love Beach House. Fuck, or um, what album is it? Oh goodness gracious me, I can't even remember album names now. Too. Depression Cherry.
Oh
I have
yeah,
that.
oh yeah.
I have that album on vinyl, and the cover is it's like a velvet red cover, like the sleeves, and
Mm-hmm.
it's such a great album. I love listening to it front to back, and I feel like the best albums are the ones that you can listen to all the way through from beginning to
Oh
end.
yeah,
And
definitely.
I haven't been listening to them that much, so I'm glad that you have reminded me of how awesome Beach House is. So, okay. Would you like to talk about a little bit more of your writing? So you mentioned that a lot of your writing is kind of like a good outlet for you. Is there any? We'll kind of jump into your next song here soon. But is there any other variances in your writing? Do you like to write? So you've done like a breakup song. This past song was more about, dealing with like personal traumas. Um, do you want to
Well,
expand on that?
I really like a lot of the stuff I write about is sort of just, things that I've dealt with, mostly how I deal with them. Just kind of, I try and highlight, especially in my more like experimental songs that I just kind of have locked in a little book somewhere, just the struggle. And that, like, when you're focusing on healing and focusing on bettering yourself, like, it is not a straight path. It's not at all linear. And, I've struggled with mental illness and a lot of things like that. So when I write, I do keep other people in mind, and I try to think like, well, this is how I deal with stuff, and these are the things that I've gone through, and just in hopes that one day somebody will be able to listen to it and be like, oh my gosh, I've never heard this perspective before. Like, this is exactly what I'm thinking, because I've heard stuff like that, and it's just so validating, and it makes me feel so much better. So I try and be as absolutely transparent as possible and write about my experiences, of which I've had quite a few, with mental illness, and my experiences with how that affects my interpersonal relationships. I do like to write a little love song every once in a while. I usually don't ever like show them to anyone, because I think it's really embarrassing for me, because I'm just like, oh yeah, sweet little whatever, sweet little nothings about eye color. Yeah, those are mostly more for me, and for me to like show a significant other and be like, oh, look at this thing I wrote you, and then be like, oh, and that's about it. So
Oh no, that's pretty interesting. I feel like, a lot of people capitalize on love songs. There's plenty of them. And so it's kind of interesting that you kind of like stray away from, I guess, sharing that in your kind of like produced music. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I think it's a very personal thing for me, especially because of some of the things I've gone through in regards to other people and how they've affected that aspect of my life. Is that I like to keep that part of my life not as private as I can. Like, if I really like someone, I'm gonna go shout it from the rooftops like any other human being. But it's just it's something that I like to experience, and I like to keep it between, me and somebody else. I feel like it's very important to kind of keep that intimacy and be able to share that as a personal, like private thing, as opposed to going out and telling everybody, oh, we do this, you know what I mean? We make out sometimes. Like, it's just like, okay, well, there goes the magic. So.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. I've never really thought of it like that, but as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah. I think like you hear a lot of, different variations, so many different love songs, some more explicit than others. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that you think, or that you kind of think of it as something that should be a little bit more, like you said, a little bit more intimate, a little bit more personal, which I think is very sweet. I don't know. I love that. Alrighty, so we're gonna take a quick break here after these messages, and then Gail will jump right into the next song in a few.
Sounds good.
Coming to you from the University of Kentucky every Wednesday night, it's WRFL Live. Experience the only show that features your favorite local and regional bands. Tune in to 88.1 Wednesdays from 8 to 10 p.m. for a full hour of Lexington's best local talent, followed by a live performance.
Enjoy tunes from groups you know and love around the area while keeping your ears open to the possibility of something new. If you are interested in performing on WRFL Live, give us a call. WRFL, all the way to the left.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you're sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. And clean and disinfect frequently touched objects. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and WRFL.
Alrighty, and we're back with WRFL Live. It's your girl, A Penny. We're about halfway in the show with Gale Eakins.
Hello.
And so we were just talking about just kind of songwriting and just love songs in particular. now I kind of want to shift gears and I've always talked about or talked to local artists about how the pandemic has kind of impacted them and a lot of people aren't able to go to shows. And that I think that's the biggest thing that's kind of changed how artists have been doing their thing around Lexington. So I want to ask you, how has the pandemic has it changed much in how you produce music or perform music? What's that like?
Well, as I've mentioned probably way too many times during this broadcast, like I used to perform at a local coffee shop around Lexington, and they had open mics every Monday night. So pretty much every Monday night, I would drive an hour south after school, take that day off work, whatever, and I'd go, just perform some of my originals, and that led to a lot of growth in me as a songwriter and a lyricist and things like that because I was exposed to other people, like other local people's styles. And we didn't really have that in the small town where I grew up. So that was, very motivating for me because I didn't think I was that good or anything that special when I started. And I had a lot of people who quickly became some of my best friends who were around common grounds and who were like, oh yeah, you are really good, you need to do something with this, like seriously. And I was just like, oh really. So that's what started me, and that was an aspect of my, I guess, music career that I loved very dearly and valued a lot, not only because it was just kind of a small close-knit thing and everybody knew who I was when I would go there, and I made a lot of friends and I got to know a lot of other local musicians. And after the pandemic kind of hit, it was in the second semester of my senior year of high school that happened. So I had to do the rest of my senior year online. I had to graduate by myself, and that was very mentally interesting for me, having dealt with depression and anxiety before. I just wanted to lay in bed all day, and I could lay in bed all day because there was nothing else to do. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't do anything. And then after a while, I was like, well, I don't know, I should probably do something with this music thing because I can't go anywhere and I can't do anything. So I might as well sit down and try and figure out like how to produce and how to actually go somewhere with this instead of just, playing little piano jigs every once in a while. So that's when I started really seriously looking into producing and things like that. And I almost bought $200 worth of like music equipment. Then I had to stop myself because my laptop does not have enough RAM for that. I had to check myself before I wrecked myself there. But after that, I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials on like how to mix and how to master. And that's when I started writing tracks and stuff. And now that everything's kind of starting to open back up, I have been able to kind of get that out there a little bit. The Friday before last, I went out and I played at a showcase in Woodland Park. And the funny thing about my career as a musician is that for some reason I have been lumped in with the other electronic kind of artist demographic in Lexington, which is rap. A lot of rappers, a lot of very talented rappers who create their own music, super great people. Like, you will never feel more connection and love and energy than when you're around, that whole group of people. But I'm not really a rapper. I always stick out a lot, and it's just been very, very interesting for me to kind of navigate that as my only real outlet to perform, because those are the only real connections that I have as a musician right now. So, I just walk in, all these people are like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? And they go up there and they like rap their super awesome rapper stuff. And then I'm up there and I'm like, hello, I am Gale. Here is some indie music from this very small girl. And I just stand up there and sing my little cutesy songs, and everybody's like, yeah, you got a good voice. And then they just kind of move on. And I'm just like, okay, that was kind of awkward, but gotta get somewhere somehow. So I don't know, in terms of the pandemic, I think it really helped me grow as kind of a more electronic musician. But I really, really miss being able to perform every week. Like, if that is the only real absence I think I felt in my life due to COVID-19, is just not being able to see those people and walk into a super packed little tiny coffee shop and have to like wade this little ocean of people just to be like, I want a hot chocolate. So I don't know. It's just kind of sad now. I walk into that place and all the tables are super far apart and there's like one
Yep.
singular table up on the stage where I used to perform, and it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, we close at 5 now. Okay,
Yeah,
So
I've definitely been to Common Grounds. I actually live not that far from Common Grounds. I live like 2 minutes, a 2 minute walk away. Right down Arlington. So yeah, I've been there since they've reopened and kind of limited in-person seating, and it's not the same. And also
no,
you just like you said, they don't have the open mics, they don't have it all isn't really the same. But
no.
yeah, it sucks that the pandemic has kind of stripped that opportunity, because like I said, I asked this question a lot for artists because I'm curious about how they've kind of navigated the pandemic as an artist, a local artist, because a lot of them rely on venues, yours more so in particular, Common Grounds. Um, but the feeling of performing live, being at a live show, those are all experiences that we can't really have at the moment. Like, you can't mosh, that's not COVID friendly. You can't that's absolutely not allowed. Yeah, I mean, like, standing and watching a live band. I mean, I'm gonna do that tomorrow at the Burl. But they have the tables, the socially distant tables. It's just not the same, and
Yeah.
I truly miss it. Have you been to any live concerts before?
I, in the past like couple of years, I've been to a Hippocampus concert in Louisville, which was really awesome. And it's kind of funny because I was supposed to go with a lot of other people, but they kind of bailed out on me, and I had all these tickets that I'd bought for them, and they didn't pay me back for ever. Still kind of sad about that. But my dad went with me. My at the time 56-year-old father, and him and I have a very similar music taste. So he went there and he was like, yeah, I like the part with like the trumpet. He went and sat way up in the back, and I was down in general admission, like shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of other teenagers. And afterwards, we were walking to the car, and he said, I really like that. And I'm like, I'm glad you like that, Dad. And then last summer I went to a 21 Pilots concert, which was, oh my gosh, it's everybody says it, but like, you just have to go. And then you know what the experience is like after you go. And it's super loud, you can barely hear for like a year afterwards. But it's just so worth it to see, especially for me, because they've been a favorite band of mine for a very long time. So finally getting to see them live was just like the epitome of awesome things I've gotten to experience. And other than that, my boyfriend is in a band. They actually played last week, Taylor Road, and they do a couple of local gigs. I'm kind of a roadie when I can be due to work, and I always try and go and see their gigs. And I mean, they're super good, so not complaining there.
Yeah, they were a hoot last week. They were funny. I think whenever you get like a band of boys together, it'll always be some good conversation. It was pretty
Oh
funny.
yeah,
And they were so
it's
sweet too. But so you were talking about you know, how you've kind of written more during the pandemic. Is there any, I guess, upcoming releases or anything listeners should expect?
Well, I'm trying really hard. I've been trying really hard for a while now. I'm struggling on time and energy to do things now. That I'm in college and I have a job that works me like 35 hours part time. Thank you very much for that, by the way. And, so it's just been kind of difficult to be able to set aside time to work on things. But here I'm really saying it this time. I've said a bunch of stuff before, like at the end of the month I will have something, and then I didn't have anything. And for that month and the month after that and the month after that. But like, I think I actually have enough things going for me now that I'm able to solidly say that by like the middle of November I should be putting stuff out on Spotify. Other than that, I have an Instagram. It's Gale underscore, like GALE underscore the underscore band. It's very funny because I'm not a band. I am just me, one man band. But it's my little piece of irony right there. But I'm not super active on that. But that's where you're going to find like different information about if I'm releasing something, different things like that. And I don't know, it's a fun little time. Sometimes I put pictures of me and my cat, and I just goof off and show little snippets of what I'm working on. So definitely recommend that if you would like to hear about upcoming releases.
Nice. Very cool. All right, we're going to take a short break after this message, and then, Gail, we're going to jump right back into that last song.
All right.
This portion of WRFL's programming is made possible in part by Broomwagon Coffee and Bikes. Located at 800 North Limestone Street, Broomwagon offers a cafe and espresso bar in addition to its full-service bike shop. For more information, you can visit broomwagonbikes.com or call 859-554-6938. WRFL thanks Broomwagon for supporting college radio.
All right, and we are back with WRFL Live. It's your girl, A Penny, also known as Allison, your local music director. And we're here with Gale Eakins.
It's me.
And so we were just chatting it up, and we're actually going to do her last song, which I said previously was Mr. Williams, but the order got shifted around. So now it's actually Mr. Williams.
There's something strange about the way you are. It makes me think that we've met before. The little things that you tend to say, the way your eyes make me look away. Of course I'll be your lover boy. I'll pretend I'm not just a toy. I'll try to hide my fragile voice. My heart can't make this kind of choice. And if I can live with myself after this, then I can live through anything. Oh, I don't know what to think. I guess I'll just have another drink. Where is this place that I find myself? And why do they say that I need help? Do you see what I see? Walls closing in, floor sinking, the kitchen sink lights receding, thoughts devoid of all meaning, and all that's left is myself in the mirror. But it's not me, just an effigy, a parasite that's feeding on my sanity. And I want what I want, so I do what I do. That never seemed to bother you until I had to choose between our love and a good future for you. And in the end, I can't decide if it was worth it, 'cause now when I say I love you, you hardly ever return it. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Oh, fatal naivety, guide me and blind me. The truth can be too hard to see. But if you can live with yourself after this,
Alrighty, that was Gale Eakins with Mr. Williams. So, is Mr. Williams anyone in particular? Or is
My
it just
hometown.
okay. Okay, so do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So, I inadvertently ended up learning a little bit of history about my hometown, and it is at pretty much the exact midpoint on I-75 between Lexington and Cincinnati. So it used to be the most major town in my county because people on their little stagecoaches would go and stop there and stay the night there before they went on the other 2-day journey to Cincinnati. So it would actually used to be a plot of land owned by one Arnold Williams. And that song is a lot about kind of the struggles that I faced being torn between my hometown, which is very rural now, very small, not a terribly important place. And, I just going to Lexington all the time. I was always in Lexington. Like, all of my high school friends probably hated me because every time we were talking, I'd be like, oh, when I was in Lexington, and like, they're just like, can you stop already? And so I, that song is a lot about kind of having those experiences and almost, feeling like I was dizzy from going back and forth and back and forth and trying to like justify these two sort of lives that I had is like a high school student in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and like going out and doing stuff for music in Lexington and navigating the city and just navigating a lot of things like that. And I feel like kind of moving out of high school early is sort of I don't know, the experience that I had with just driving all the time. I was always on the road, and because of that, like, I had a lot of experiences that were usually reserved for like, once you get out of high school and you go and you do stuff. And I'm not making a lot of sense. I must be very tired, but
I feel it. I definitely feel it.
Right. But basically, what it is, I dealt with a lot more like adult things and having to figure out what to do with my independence and being on my own, without my parents in a whole new city, and just having all sorts of experiences that I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna tell my parents about this until I'm 30. So, and sort of having to learn how to pull myself up out of my own kind of horribly personally created experiences, with different adult things and just figuring out how to take care of myself a little bit. And just not having my parents there to guide me all the time. I mean, obviously they still do guide me. I'm an only child, so I'm probably, my mom and dad are always like, oh, we're a little girl, our pride is away. And but it was definitely, there was an interesting time period after my last boyfriend and I broke up where I sort of went off the rails a little bit. And, I was hanging out with like these two friends of mine, and we were just getting into all sorts of stuff, going to all these live gigs and like, just taking random midnight adventures. And we were always sleeping over at each other's houses and like, going down to Lexington for like New Year's Eve parties and things like that. And it was just like, it was a lot of driving, a lot of singing along to musicals in the car, and a lot of figuring myself out and getting into things that were very interesting for a 17-year-old to get into. So that's why I chose the name Mr. Williams for that, because I was thinking a lot about like, my hometown and the little place that I grew up as opposed to the experiences I was now having elsewhere. So in my brain, it's sort of like a functional letter to like a postcard, basically a letter home to my hometown to be like, there's something strange about the way you are, makes me think that we've met before. And so, yeah, that's kind of the motivation behind that one.
That's first, maybe in Lexington, like in a bigger city, maybe, or maybe even Cincy, New York, kind of, or do you kind of like the feel of Lexington?
Well, I did a lot of stuff in Cincinnati for music, and I really did enjoy Cincinnati. Honestly, I have to say I prefer it over Lexington just because it's like it's older, it's got the river. Who doesn't love a good little river and some good old hills, you know? But Lexington, for me, it was kind of like this oasis, like this place of opportunity because I knew people here. Whenever I was going to Lexington, I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. So it kind of had that draw, and that's why I ended up going to UK instead of like UC. And so now I live in Lexington and I'm here, and I really do love this city. But it's definitely made me very nostalgic for like going my hometown and being able to go outside and see the stars and hear like crickets instead of car horns and being able to watch the sunset and see the sun go all the way down to the horizon instead of just disappearing behind some buildings and now it's dark. And there's just a lot of like, I don't know, little romantic things about the country I miss. Like whenever I'd be driving home from Lexington, like it would just be super late at night and I'd go down my little terrible windy tiny road, didn't even have a center line, potholes everywhere, like twisting all over the place. And I'd like smell the good old cow farms and the occasional skunk, the occasional roadkill, just part of the ambiance. But I'd get almost to my house and there was this like pond that's next to the road and I would hear like little frogs and a holdover from my childhood. I used to call them peepers because they just make this little like peeping sound. And so I drive past them every single time I went home, see all the fireflies in the yard, and I'd park. And my parents would always leave the porch light on for me. And, I'd go inside, lock the door, and turn off the porch light. And so that's something I don't really get now. Everything's just kind of some form of bright all the time. And it's kind of sad, but I don't know. There's just a lot more going on here. And probably eventually I'll settle for a good old in between whenever I end up finding a house or whatever and go to like the edge of the suburbs in some little tiny house with like 27 cats and where I can just drive 5 minutes like the other way and go see the country. So
No, I'm originally from Texas, but I've lived in Lexington for so long, for about 10 or 11 years now. But I'm never really I'm not from the country, but I do appreciate a lot of the landscaping, a lot of, like driving on Bluegrass Parkway. I love it. I love
oh yeah.
Bluegrass Parkway. And I don't know, it's like those special small things about the state that I feel like I take for granted a lot. There's a lot of
Right.
stuff. And I mean, like, I'm probably not saying much just because I've been in Lexington for a while, but just kind of driving around Kentucky, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot I'm missing out on.
It's definitely a beautiful state, and it's kind of funny because anybody who knows me will describe me as very like left, you know what I mean, very kind of liberal or whatever. And living in the city definitely like exaggerates and encourages that, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know. There's just something that is so nostalgic for me about being in the country that I'm so passionate about talking about it. Every time I get on the topic of it, I'm just like, oh yeah, the rolling hills of Williamstown, Kentucky, and the way the cows used to walk in the road and make me late for school. This is true, by the way. I really hope that they repaired their fence because I can't even tell you how many times my school bus had to stop on my road because there was a cow in the middle of it at like 6 a.m. But and I just get into talking about all those little stories like that, and like how when our high school had parties, of course I never went because I was I don't know, fairly sheltered, good kid. But they would have parties in cornfields and they'd go like, I don't know, do whatever unsupervised teenagers do in cornfields instead of like somebody's house. And, we'd all go to tractor pulls and there'd be demolition derbies. And I mean, my twins coming out right now just talking about it, like, the demolition derby. Yeah. my friend Matthew Wright, he's got those cars, he beats them up. It's just something that's so beautiful and there's so much history in the South and in Kentucky. And I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like I almost never really took it for granted. I mean, sometimes I probably did, but I spent so long near the end of high school just trying to get out that I didn't really stop and take moments to to think about like, oh yeah, this is my hometown. This is a beautiful place. This is where I grew up. And, now that I live in Lexington, like I'll take some of my friends on field trips out to the country, and I'll show my little like cute little town center, and I'll drive them out to my house, and they're like, are you sure this road is safe? And it's the cutest thing. But
Don't worry, I got it.
yeah.
Alrighty, so we are actually at 10 p.m. So thank you so much, Gale, for joining us this evening. I've had a great conversation with you. I feel like you're such a sweet person. I wish I could meet you in person. But thank you all for tuning in to WRFL Live. Tune in next week. We're going to have Jockey Onassis in with us for that WRFL Live. So make sure you tune in. Have a great night, and I'll see you all next week.